Hi and welcome. I'm Andy Burnham and you are watching A News. Let's have a look at the headlines. Iran claims 7 people have been killed and 16 wounded in another night of fire with the US. Ukraine's president faces a growing backlash over plans to replace his defense minister. And Andy Burnham takes over as leader of the UK Labour Party days before becoming Prime Minister. Thank you for tuning in. The US has launched strikes on Iran for a 6th night in a row. Washington says its troops have boarded a vessel in the Gulf of Oman as part of its blockade of Iranian ports. Iran has retaliated by targeting US military facilities in the region. Here's the latest.
The US military has launched its latest wave of strikes on Iran for the 6th night in a row. US Central Command said the operation was carried out on the orders of President Donald Trump and involved fighter jets, aerial drones, and warships. It said precision munitions hit dozens of Iranian military targets, including coastal surveillance and air defense sites, military logistics, infrastructure, and maritime capabilities. Iran has condemned the attacks, with its foreign ministry calling them a violation of the United Nations Charter and international law. The White House said the strikes followed what it said were Iran's violation of last month's Memorandum of Understanding. It accused Tehran of firing on commercial vessels moving through the Strait of Hormuz.
The reason, and this is important for the American people to understand, the reason for the recent strikes over the course of the last several days is because Iran violated the Memorandum of Understanding that we struck with them. Specifically, in the Memorandum of Understanding that they signed, they were not to fire on commercial vessels moving through the Strait of Hormuz. And unfortunately, they have made the tragic decision for them to do that. And President Trump is not going to sit by and allow these acts of terrorism to take place in the Strait without ensuring Iran pays consequences for that, and that's what we are witnessing right now.
Iran has responded by targeting US bases and facilities in Kuwait, Bahrain, and Jordan. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said its naval and aerospace forces carried out joint missile and drone attacks on radar systems, communication centers, command facilities, and other military infrastructure. The renewed fire comes despite a US-Iranian Memorandum of Understanding signed in mid-June. Both sides were expected to end hostilities and begin negotiating towards a final agreement within 60 days. The White House says Iran is still communicating with Washington and wants to make a deal, but the latest escalation has put the fragile truce under mounting pressure.
Meanwhile, Iran says at least 7 people were killed and 16 more wounded in the latest wave of US strikes on bridges and residential areas. Tehran's mission to the UN said the attacks against civilians and non-military infrastructure constitute war crimes. A News' Turashid Alilu has more on that from Tehran.
Local media sources in Iran reported that the death toll has risen to 7, resulting from US attacks on residential areas and bridges in Bandar Abbas and Bandar Khamir in southern Iran late on Thursday. According to the state broadcaster IRIB and the semi-official Fars news agency, at least 16 non-military citizens were wounded, including 9 receiving medical treatment for serious injuries. Earlier on Thursday, the Ministry of Health said more than 300 people have been injured and 35 others killed in the US attacks since 24th of June. The southern provinces of Hormuzgan, Sistan and Baluchistan, and Khuzestan, bordering the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman, have suffered the heaviest impact from the latest attacks. Meanwhile, Iran's UN ambassador, Amir Said Iravani, has sent a letter to the Security Council and the UN Secretary General condemning the attacks on Iranian civilian infrastructure, calling them war crimes. In the letter, he said that targeting civilians is a serious violation of international humanitarian law, and the US should bear full responsibility. He also wrote that the continuation of illegal armed attacks poses a serious threat to international peace and security, freedom of navigation, regional stability, and the security of the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, linking the Persian Gulf to the Sea of Oman. In Tehran, the Foreign Ministry said in a statement that the U.S. betrayed diplomatic efforts by breaching the Memorandum of Understanding signed in June, adding that the U.S. should be held responsible for breaching the agreement. The statement also called on neighboring countries in the sovereign Persian Gulf states to prevent the U.S. attacks from their soil and airspace, defending Iran's right to hit U.S. bases and interests in the region as an act of self-defense. Turad Shiralilu from Tehran for A News.
Turning now to Ukraine, where the president is facing a growing backlash over plans to replace his defense minister. Protesters have gathered for a second day across the country, angry over Zelensky's surprise cabinet reshuffle. Demonstrators claim it's a backward step in the ongoing conflict with Russia.
Ukrainians rallied in central Kiev on Friday to protest against President Volodymyr Zelensky's dismissal of Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov. He was a popular official, widely credited with modernizing Ukraine's military. But on Thursday, Zelensky removed him from office as the country remains at war. The move has exposed reported tensions between Fedorov and Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrsky over military reforms.
To most of the public, it appears that they decided to keep a more compliant general like Syrsky, while replacing a more challenging, yet effective minister like Fedorov, since he was too strong a reformer, who, in the president's eyes, might somehow have been able to influence, for example, become a president in the next election.
Yes, the government does need some kind of reset right now. But it should retain those people who are effective in their positions and who deliver results for the country, both for the military and the civilian population.
Dozens of protesters urged the government to explain the decision and listen to public concerns. Many demonstrators said they hope public pressure will persuade the government to reconsider.
What upsets me the most is that there is a complete lack of communication between the government and the people of Ukraine. Why, specifically, was the defense minister replaced?
I truly believe and hope that the government will, after all, listen to the people, that it will heed the people's demands, because this is what the people want, for the sake of our soldiers' lives and for the sake of the civilians who live under air attacks every day.
Zelensky has defended the reshuffle as part of a broader effort to renew his government. Critics, however, argue that removing Fedorov could undermine reforms aimed at improving military efficiency and tackling corruption.
Meanwhile, Ukraine says it's struck 2 sanctioned Russian oil tankers in the Black Sea. Kyiv says it's targeting Moscow's shadow fleet of vessels being used to evade international sanctions. The operation comes as fighting continues across Ukraine. A Russian-guided bomb strike on the city of Zaporizhia has killed at least 3 civilians in the latest strikes. Missile attacks on Odessa have left 2 people dead and 8 others injured. Azerbaijan's foreign ministry says the body of the Azerbaijani captain of the merchant vessel struck off the coast of Odessa has now been recovered. That Turkish cargo ship was hit on Tuesday. Turkish foreign minister has called for a resumption of peace talks on his trip to Kyiv. Hakan Fidan has told President Zelensky that Ankara is willing to host the next round of negotiations between Kyiv and Moscow. Adam Morrow has more on that in Istanbul.
Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has met Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kiev as Ankara continues its diplomatic efforts to revive stalled talks aimed at ending the Russia-Ukraine war. The closed-door meeting took place Thursday evening during Fidan's two-day visit to Ukraine. According to the Ukrainian president, the meeting tackled possible ways of reviving the stalled peace process between Kiev and Moscow.
We are very thankful for your support of our territorial integrity, sovereignty, and we're thankful for your steps in negotiations. In the process, we had several meetings in Turkey, and we really want to have peace for our country.
Zelensky also conferred Ukraine's second-class Order of Merit on Fidan, citing the latter's outstanding personal contribution to strengthening bilateral ties between the two countries. The meeting came only hours after Fidan held talks with his Ukrainian counterpart, Andriy Sybiha, with whom he held a joint press conference in the Ukrainian capital. Speaking to reporters, Fidan urged a resumption of direct negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, reiterating Turkey's readiness to provide a venue for future talks. Turkey has previously hosted several rounds of talks between Russian and Ukrainian delegations, while maintaining working relations with both Moscow and Kiev throughout the war. But soon after Fidan made the remarks, the Kremlin appeared to downplay prospects for an immediate return to the negotiating table. While the Kremlin spokesman thanked Turkey for its ongoing diplomatic efforts, he also said there was currently no prospect of a short-term resumption of peace talks. The contrasting statements highlight the challenges facing Ankara as it seeks to revive diplomacy between the warring parties. Nevertheless, Fidan's visit to Kiev underscores Turkey's continuing effort to position itself as a mediator, with Ankara arguing that direct dialogue remains the only way of finding a negotiated end to the ongoing conflict. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
As the protests against the dismissal of Ukraine's former Minister of Defense, Mikhailo Fedorov, continue for a second consecutive day in Kiev and other cities. Joining us now from Lisbon to take a closer look at how this development might impact the battlefield is Lieutenant General Marco Serogna. General, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us on A News. Now, these protests were already extraordinary, but the appointment of a new defense minister was postponed as Zelensky's new pick reportedly turned down the post. Then the acting head of Ukraine's security service was appointed as interim minister. How delicate is this moment for Ukraine?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me this afternoon. So it's most probably after the dismissal of Zaluzny, in the former chief of armed staff in the first years of the war, is most probably the most sensitive issue concerning the establishment and the support of President Zelensky in the last years. So, and that's something that he has to deal. Of course, he is the president, so we have to deal with this. The main problem is a kind of some bad relation with the chief of staff, and the armed forces chief of staff, and the Minister of Defense, of course. But the Minister of Defense is someone that is under a technical point of view. It's really very good. He introduced several reforms in the Minister of Defense. Not only, of course, the Minister of Defense in Ukraine, it's not in charge of the strategic leading of the war. That is the president and the chief of staff and the armed forces and the cabinet of the president. But nevertheless, under the main role of the ministry is to support, provide new capabilities. And Fedorov was a former minister of digital transformation, so it's someone that's very much link to technologies, new technologies, and he was very able to introduce reforms in the defense space industry of Ukraine.
Well, General, protesters are calling for his reinstatement exactly because of that part, this digital and technology part. They seem to attribute these recent successes on the battlefield to Fedorov as he championed this evolution in drone warfare. Do you believe that any sort of domestic or perhaps even pressure from allies could reverse this decision?
Let's see. Of course, the situation is not very easy for President Zelensky. And why? Because most probably it didn't evaluate completely all the questions about this move of the Minister of Defense. Is also one of the members of the cabinet is very much supported by the United States. Like the Prime Minister, and due to the links, that's something that we know, and everybody knows that the links that Fedorov has with, or at least had with Elon Musk, and is very much linked to the success of the cutoff of the links of Starlink to the Russians in the front line that were using the Starlink in an illegal, we can say, way, and that Fedorov was very much the guy that provided the list of the non-legal accounts that the Russians were using at the time. So it's something that was very important. It still is very important for the success that the Ukrainian armed forces has in the front line. So it's something that most probably President Zelensky has to evaluate. I don't know if he's going to revert the decision. Fedorov was, since the very beginning, in the one of the members of the inner circle of Zelensky. So, but it's a kind of it's most probably the first big issue in civil-military relations in Ukraine. In Ukraine, so it's something that has to be dealt, of course. I suppose it is not going to complicate the way the Ukraine is dealing with the war, of course, in a mood of a strong success in especially in the attacks in the rear of Russia and Crimea it's very important. But it's something that they have to solve for sure.
And General, you've touched upon this a bit earlier on these disagreements with other military officials following his dismissal. Fedorov publicly aired grievances with Armed Forces Chief General Syrskyi. Now, Zelensky acknowledged that the two were unable to work together effectively. Was this move inevitable then?
Let's see. I don't know the details, but to President Zelensky to take this took this decision 2 or 3 days ago is a signal. Is a signal that most probably the relations were not strong or enough to continue with the process to conduct the war. So and that is normally the big problems arrive when the things are not so good, as is the case now in Ukraine. So the situation is not perfect, as you know, but somehow Ukraine has find a way to change at least the perceptions from everybody that Ukraine is turned the mood of the war that was very much in favor of Russia in the past, as you know, but in the last couple of months, or 3 or 4 months, everything will start changing in the way that Russia is not anymore seen as the quick winner of this. So the situation changed, and so it's not. Sometimes it seems strange that some issues, complicated issues, arise in a time of a good mood. But that's the way that the things. Look, we have. The war most probably is going to stop in the next, I don't know, 6 to 10 months or 1 year maximum. And so the political system of Ukraine are positioned for the next phase. So it's,
and General, we're running out of time, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on this just briefly. Do you believe that Kremlin will try to seize this opportunity and do what?
Look, the Russians most probably are going to try to seize this and in their favor, of course. But nevertheless, I suppose that Fedorov, Sisky, and others, they are patriots, and so they have to find a way to restore the good mood of Ukraine, of course, and the Ukrainian armed forces, in a sense that turn this feeling of success that everybody is seeing inside Ukraine and the allies, of course, in something that are going to provocate some bad things to this move. So I suppose that they are going to solve this and try to figure out that it's not the time to give Russia a free gift, so to speak.
General Staronia, thank you so much for joining us on A News and sharing your insight.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
In other news, a longtime White House teleprompter operator for U.S. President Donald Trump has been placed on unpaid administrative leave. Federal regulators are investigating whether he engaged in insider trading. Gabriel Perez is accused of using advanced knowledge of Trump's speeches to place bets on the platform Kalshi. He is alleged to have made nearly $100,000. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said Perez is cooperating with investigators. He has worked at the White House since 2016.
It's great to be back with all of you. Are there any other White House staffers or people within the administration who are suspected of also placing bets on Kalshi or Polymarket or other things with some of this privileged information? Not to my knowledge, not that I've been made aware of. And as you saw, I think this played out exactly how it should. Kalshi notified the CFTC of suspicious activity. They investigated that, identified the individual, and he will now no longer be working at the White House. So I think that answers all the questions on this matter. Reagan.
All right, we'll be back after a short break with the latest from the UK, where Andy Burnham is poised to take over as new Prime Minister. Don't go away. Welcome back. You are watching A News. Andy Burnham, the former mayor of Greater Manchester, has been confirmed as UK Labour leader. He takes over at the helm of the governing party from Keir Starmer. In his first speech, Burnham pledged to give hope back to voters, adding that the UK had turned its back on working-class communities. Burnham has been confirmed as Labour leader after running for the post unopposed. He will replace Keir Starmer in number 10 Downing Street and will go to see King Charles on Monday to officially become Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
Relentlessly to build a culture of one Labour.
In his first speech as party leader, Burnham pledged to unite the Labour Party and devolve power from Westminster towards the regions of the UK. Zainab Farajzadeh reports.
Andy Burnham has officially been confirmed as the new leader of the Labour Party. He succeeds Keir Starmer after securing overwhelming support from Labour MPs and affiliated trade unions. Before declaring the result, Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood announced that Burnham was the only candidate to meet the nominations threshold, receiving 379 nominations from Labour MPs and 23 nominations from affiliated organisations, including all 11 trade unions. In his first speech as leader, Burnham thanked Keir Starmer for what he described as transforming Labour from its worst electoral defeat to its biggest victory, praising his record on reducing NHS waiting lists and restoring Britain's standing on the world stage. Looking ahead, Burnham said the party must recognize that politics has failed too many ordinary people and pledged to rebuild trust. He outlined 5 pledges for his leadership, creating what he called one Labour team to end internal divisions, building a new style of politics, changing the party's political direction, leading for every part of the United Kingdom and shifting power away from Westminster and Whitehall and into the hands of local communities. Burnham also sought to answer critics who say his focus has been too heavily centred on Greater Manchester. He insisted he would now be a leader for the North, the South, the East and the West, as well as Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, arguing that communities across the country face many of the same economic challenges. He also repeated his belief that Britain took a series of wrong turns during the 1980s, saying decades of centralized political power and privatization had left many communities with less control over housing, transport and other essential services. Burnham has not yet named his top team, saying he wants it to reflect voices from across the Labour Party. Burnham also told supporters he was ready to lead the party, saying he knows what he believes, knows what he wants to do and has a plan. He ended his speech by pledging to bring back hope as Labour's new leader. Zena Farizadeh, A News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
France and Germany are holding high-level meetings aimed at strengthening cooperation on shared priorities. Defense, security, energy and the economy are all on the agenda as the two governments meet in Germany. French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz began the day with a meeting of the Franco-German Defense and Security Council. Discussions in the city of Cologne have covered nuclear deterrence, missile defense, long-range strike capabilities and space cooperation. The leaders later began joint government consultations focused on economic policy, energy, security and defense, with a joint news conference scheduled afterwards. U.S. President Donald Trump has shared an article highlighting Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev's remarks on Azerbaijan-U.S. relations. The Breitbart article by Joshua Klein follows his question to Aliyev at the Shusha Global Media Forum on Azerbaijan-U.S. relations and the peace process with Armenia. Azerbaijan's president was quoted as saying that the Trump administration played a special role in advancing the peace process, arguing that previous U.S. administrations had focused on freezing the conflict rather than resolving it. Joining us now to talk on U.S.-Azerbaijan relations following the latest friendly exchange between the two presidents is Ali Mammadov, PhD researcher in political science at George Mason University and the managing editor at the Center for Security Policy Studies. He's coming to us from Washington. Ali, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. What does yet another exchange of pleasantries and kind words between the leaders signal for Washington-Baku relations?
So I think it's a warm and meaningful diplomatic gesture, but it also shows the level of relations that the United States and Azerbaijan have reached together. They're already strategic partners, and it can even be, I think it would be fair to say that the relationship between the United States and Azerbaijan is going through its peak right now.
It will soon be a year since the Washington summit between Donald Trump, Ilham Aliyev, and Nikol Pashinyan. Armenia and Azerbaijan are now, according to officials of both countries, living peace. How significant of a role would you say the U.S. plays in the entire process?
I think the role of the United States is very significant. First of all, it brings legitimacy to this peace process because historically, whenever there is a long-standing conflict, let's say between two sides, most of the time there needs to be a third side to balance the things. And given the fact that the United States is this third side, I think it brings legitimacy. But also the United States is now involved more than just symbolically. It's now involved in a tangible and visible way. For example, it's signed strategic partnership agreements with Azerbaijan, and we also know that the visit of the Vice President J.D. Vance, for example, promised several new avenues for cooperation. also, in addition to that, the economic dialogue between the United States and Azerbaijan promised $8 billion of investments from US companies. So I think it in general means that the United States is interested in becoming a part of the region and working with the region in a constructive way.
Well, on the US becoming part of the region, we did hear some updates on the TRIP project recently. What does American involvement in the project mean for the likelihood of its realization?
So I think it might mean more investments because, as we know, the American companies will be basically running the Armenia part of the project. It will certainly bring tangible investments and symbolic legitimacy too. I think it's very important symbolically too because that can basically cement a good foundation for future peace in the region.
Ali, how would you say Washington's approach to the region has changed over the years, and how much of it depends on the standing of each individual country in the South Caucasus?
So I think it's changed very significantly. As we might remember, the last time relations were this good, or let's say similar to this, was when the global war on terror was happening. And the United States was working very closely with South Caucasus and Central Asia and other regional countries. But I think after that, the United States basically left a wrong impression on these countries that it didn't want to continue cooperating. Because, I mean, it was natural probably in international politics, but the United States basically approached the regions, both Central Asia or the South Caucasus, through this global war on terror lens for its own interests. But right now, I think the Trump administration views the region as a separately valuable region in itself. And most importantly, the previous administrations used to view Azerbaijan as a part of this Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict only, through that lens only. But I think the Trump administration views Azerbaijan as a valuable partner in itself, and it really depends on the current geopolitical realities in the region. There's now opportunity for peace. In addition to that, the conditions have changed, as I said. The United States foreign policy, the United States worldview has changed. It's become, I would say, more pragmatic in a way that it's not actively trying to pursue any ideology in its foreign policy or national security strategy. So these have all, I think, made it possible. Especially, I would say, Azerbaijan's role have been very critical in this, because right now Azerbaijan is located in a geostrategically important place, and it was known for decades. But right now it's becoming clear as a result of the war in Ukraine or the war in Iran that Azerbaijan has way more diplomatic capital than it was visible, let's say, years ago.
And how would you say Baku is using this chance, using these facts and realities that you have, Russia to the north, Iran to the south, you are on a trade route linking China to Europe. How does Baku balance all of these lanes, would you say?
So Baku has been playing an important role in international politics, I would say, especially since the Trump administration came to power for the second time. And it's because the Trump administration's role basically gave a shock effect to the world. It basically changed the rules of the game in international politics, I would say. It basically kind of changed the norms that were kind of untouchable up until now. And I think in today's world, countries like Azerbaijan, which has higher levels of diplomatic capital, are now playing more important roles. And it's becoming clear that diplomatic capital is as important as tangible, material resources. So Azerbaijan has been using it effectively, especially we know that, for example, a year ago, I think, when Israel and Syria, for example, was on the verge of direct military clash, they resolved these issues through Baku, through Azerbaijan. So one would think that, oh, it's the Middle East and this is South Caucasus, how is this related? But it shows that Azerbaijan's outreach, its influence, is way bigger than its size, and it exceeds the South Caucasus region.
And Ali, how does this practical approach to the region of South Caucasus, to Azerbaijan, fit into the broader foreign policy of the second Trump administration?
So there's a part in the national security strategy of the Trump administration that was published in 2025. And that was basically saying that the Trump administration's national security strategy is realistic, but it's not realist. It's pragmatic, but it's not pragmatist, and it's not following a certain ideology. So I would say that the current worldview that the United States has is that the United States needs to prioritize its national interests, and whatever is needed needs to be done for this purpose. It's kind of trying to avoid any type of labels, any type of ideologies, and I think that kind of fits in. That kind of explains why the United States is now so close with the regions like the South Caucasus or Central Asia, because the United States is now able to more clearly see the values in these regions, unlike the previous administrations. And as I said, it's because these previous administrations basically were kind of trying to rule the foreign policy through these untouchable norms from decades ago, these established norms. But the Trump administration's view is totally different.
Well, Ali, thank you so much for joining us here on A News and sharing your analysis. Turning now to Greece, where a worsening water crisis is hitting the Aegean Islands just as summer tourism peaks. Authorities on several islands have declared drought emergencies, forcing them to prioritize tap water for visitors over irrigation for local farms.
From above, Astipalaia looks like a postcard of Aegean beauty. But on the ground, the reality is bone dry. 71-year-old Evdokia Palacianou walks through a withered orchard. In April, officials cut off her water to prioritize the peak tourist season. Today, her citrus trees are dead and her fields are empty.
You should see what we had here. Mandarins, oranges, plums. Now nothing. If it does not rain, I am not planting anything.
Evdokia's struggle is shared across 7 Greek islands declaring drought emergencies. Here, the sole reservoir sits at just a sixth of its capacity, leaving barely 5 months of water. As the summer population swells from 1,400 to 7,000, the existing desalination infrastructure has been overwhelmed. To keep taps running, officials have blocked agricultural irrigation and deployed expensive temporary backup systems, leaving farmers scrambling to carry brackish water just to keep their livestock alive.
If we collected all the water dropped throughout the year in a bucket, it would be just 2.5 centimeters deep. A major worry for me is what will happen if there is no rain once again this year.
With scientific models warning that climate change will severely worsen water scarcity here by 2049, locals are turning to creative conservation. Some hotels now offer guests €5 vouchers to skip daily room cleaning to save both water and energy. Athens has pledged €15 million for emergency infrastructure across the Aegean, but for islands like Astipalaia, financial aid cannot buy rain.
In Spain, over 400 people have been evacuated from 5 municipalities as a major wildfire rages in the Aragon region. The blaze, centered near Ores, has scorched over 4,500 hectares and damaged at least 10 homes. Authorities have declared a level 2 emergency, warning that erratic winds continue to drive the flames. Around 400 firefighters are battling what officials call a highly complex active front. Colombia's Navy has seized more than 3 tons of cocaine from a speedboat off the country's Caribbean coast. Authorities said 5 suspects were arrested while attempting to transport the drugs to Central America. The seized cargo is valued at more than $120 million. It was confirmed to be cocaine following laboratory testing. China is urging the United States to withdraw new visa regulations that it calls discriminatory. The measures would introduce time limits for foreign students, exchange visitors, and journalists. Under the new rules, visas that currently last for the duration of a program or employment would instead have fixed time periods. Student and exchange visas would be limited to 4 years, while journalist visas would last up to 240 days or 90 days for Chinese nationals. The rule is due to take effect 60 days after publication in the Federal Register, subject to congressional review. Beijing says it strongly opposes the measures.
China urges the United States to immediately revoke its discriminatory policies towards Chinese journalists and effectively safeguard their legitimate rights and interests in the United States. China reserves the right to take reciprocal countermeasures.
We'll be back after a short break with more on Russia's plans to curb migrant workers. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching A News. Azerbaijan's foreign minister Ceyhun Bayramov and his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov have held wide-ranging talks in Moscow on Friday, focusing on bilateral cooperation and regional developments.
Azerbaijan and Russia have outlined an ambitious agenda for closer cooperation with trade, transport, and regional security topping discussions during high-level talks in Moscow. Foreign ministers Ceyhun Bayramov and Sergei Lavrov held one-on-one talks before meeting with their delegations and addressing a joint news conference.
In the recent past, we encountered difficulties in our bilateral relations. This was already noted during our discussions today. We are pleased to note that our two states have managed to turn the page on this difficult period and fully normalize the entire spectrum of Russian-Azerbaijani relations.
Этап наших отношениях и полностью нормализовать весь спектр российско-азербайджанских отношений.
Lavrov said all issues related to the December 2024 Azov passenger plane crash had been resolved, referring to a joint statement issued by the two foreign ministries earlier this year. Economic cooperation featured prominently. Bilateral trade reached $4.9 billion in 2025, up 2.5%, while the ministers also reviewed progress on the international north-south transport corridor and transport links with Iran. On the South Caucasus, Bayramov said peace already exists de facto between Azerbaijan and Armenia and outlined the remaining steps towards a final peace agreement. Lavrov said Russia remains committed to supporting the normalization process between Baku and Yerevan.
Russia consistently supports the efforts of Azerbaijan and Armenia to achieve a full and comprehensive normalization of relations based on the set of high-level trilateral agreements reached in 2020 and 2022. As before, Russia is ready to assist both Baku and Yerevan in unblocking transport and economic links and resolving humanitarian issues.
The ministers also discussed the 3+3 regional platform, with Lavrov saying its next meeting could take place in either Baku or Yerevan. They concluded by addressing the falling level of the Caspian Sea, calling for coordinated action by the littoral states before exchanging views on the Middle East and the Russia-Ukraine conflict.
Slovakia's President Peter Pellegrini has pledged stronger support for Azerbaijan within the European Union. He made the comments during a visit to Shusha, where he met Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev and signed agreements on energy and defense.
Shusha has played host to a strategic shift in relations. Slovak President Peter Pellegrini's high-profile talks with President Ilham Aliyev have solidified a new partnership, with joint defense initiatives already taking center stage.
We prefer in Slovakia to deal with each other as a partners. That means, for example, there is cooperation in defense industry. And we were very concrete today that our Minister of Defense is looking for a joint project, some new military equipment, which will be produced by both Slovaks and Azerbaijani companies, and which can after that enter new markets through Azerbaijan. And the benefit will go to both of us.
Bratislava is backing Garabag's rebuilding phase through smart village projects while securing alternative energy routes. In Brussels, Slovakia promises to protect Azerbaijan's strategic interests.
Slovakia has a style that we respect our partners. We don't comment. And so I think we will be, how to say it, maybe like an advocate of Azerbaijan among the European countries in a positive way. And of course, where some support is needed or some decision of the EU should be taken and it is somehow connected to Azerbaijan, of course you can count on us.
This mutual trust is expected to yield practical benefits for citizens of both nations. With direct flights between Baku and Bratislava launching this October, the strategic partnership is shifting from official agreements to direct physical connections.
Kazakhstan and China have signed more than 70 commercial agreements worth over $15 billion, including a major new port on the Caspian Sea. Fariza Kalimurzina reports from Almaty.
Kazakhstan is set to significantly expand its transport capacity on the Caspian Sea, backed by a major new deal with China. The Guoyu Materials Group has signed an agreement with Kazakhstan to develop a new multifunctional port complex in Kuruk. The announcement came during President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev's walking visit to Shanghai, where he met with the company's chairman, Yu Boyan. Investment in the first phase is estimated at $300 million, while total investment across all stages could reach $1.1 billion. Construction is scheduled to begin in 2026, with the facility expected to become operational in 2 years. And according to the Kazakh President's office, the company plans to bring the project's throughput capacity to as much as 15 million tons. Kazakhstan is seeking to strengthen its position as a major Eurasian transport hub. Kuruk is strategically located on the eastern coast of the Caspian Sea, along a major transport route linking China and Central Asia with the Caucasus and Europe. The existing port currently handles around 2 million tons of cargo a year. It processes a wide range of goods, including oil products, fertilizers, metals, chemicals and vehicles. Kuruk also plays a role in Kazakhstan's agricultural exports, with its grain terminal handling shipments towards Iranian ports. The new development is expected to boost Kazakhstan's transit potential and strengthen the Middle Corridor, a key trade route between Asia and Europe. The project is also expected to create new jobs, develop local expertise, and increase the use of Kazakh goods and services. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A-News.
Russia is one step closer to tightening its migration rules after lawmakers backed a bill expanding the list of offenses that could lead to the deportation of foreign nationals. Sevil Rajapova has more on that in Tashkent.
Russia may be tightening the rules on foreign nationals. A State Duma committee is proposing to raise the number of offenses that lead to mandatory deportation from 22 to 45. Additional offenses would include discrimination based on race, nationality, religion or gender, taking narcotics in public and blocking transport. It also includes displays of extremism, such as showing banned symbols, inciting hate and distributing extremist materials. The proposal is part of Russia's broader effort to tighten migration controls. Earlier this week, authorities announced plans to require long-term foreign migrants to buy mobile phones that allow officials to track their location. If this latest proposal becomes law, it could affect millions of Central Asian workers. According to Russian border data, Uzbek citizens made more than 3.1 million entries into Russia last year, followed by 1.4 million from Tajikistan and nearly 1 million from Kyrgyzstan. The bill will now move to the State Duma for further consideration. It is Sevil Rajapova reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A-News.
Afghanistan, Iran and Tajikistan have agreed to establish a new trilateral road transport corridor Under the deal, commercial goods traveling between Iran and Tajikistan will be transported through Afghan territory. Tamim Bahis has the details in Kabul.
Representatives from Afghanistan, Iran and Tajikistan say they have struck a deal to create a new road transport corridor between the three countries. Under the proposed corridor, shipments traveling between Iran and Tajikistan will cross Afghanistan, which lies between them, potentially giving a more important role in regional trade and transit. Their agreement follows talks in the Iranian city of Mashhad. A spokesperson for Afghanistan's transport ministry said all three countries committed to strengthening transport links and providing greater facilities for the movement and transit of goods. Afghan officials hope the corridor will reduce transport barriers, improve regional connectivity, and create new opportunities for traders and transport companies. The three countries also agreed to create a working group to help facilitate visas for drivers, reduce border delays, and develop insurance arrangements for cross-border transport. The agreement is part of Afghanistan's wider effort to expand its position as a regional transit hub. In recent years, it has sought to establish new corridors and strengthen economic cooperation with its neighbors and countries in the region. Further technical discussions will be held before the corridor becomes fully operational. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
Well, that's all we have for you for now. Thank you so much for watching and stay tuned to A News.